Open your ears and lube up your butthole. It's time for the What Do We Call It podcast. Now, here's your host. It's J-Man. Welcome to the What Do We Call It podcast. I'm J-Man.
This is Steiny.
Hi.
Do you watch SNL at all, ever anymore?
Not in the last season. I usually would try to catch Weekend Update every once in a while.
I still find it funny, even though most people are like, it hasn't been funny in 25 years.
I have always been one that will watch it casually, and in any given night, there will be some skits that hit and a bunch that flop. So it's just kind of how it is. I mean, there's sometimes gold in every episode.
Well, it was like that with fucking Mad TV back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And Key and Peele. There was even a few skits, very, very few, on Chappelle's show that were kind of like, eh. And there's a reason I just dropped his name, because as you may have heard about, he was on recently, and he did a monologue where he discussed some things having to do with the Jewish peoples. And
Yes.
It created a whole nother fervor where they're calling him an anti-Semite and this and that. And
Really?
oh my God.
I thought whole Yee and what's Kyrie Irving kind of shadowed that whole deal, but
Yeah, but Dave Chappelle just name drops Kanye, and everyone's like, oh, what's he going to say? Oh, my God. And it was funny because he denounces anti-Semitism in a statement that sounds prepared. Then he stops and goes, and that, Kanye, is how you buy yourself some time.
yeah, I did like that.
It was fucking funny. And one of the things that kind of stuck out is he discussed the whole Jewish media ownership rumor. I'm going to air quotes rumor or idea. And it's been that way. I swear to God, I can remember back in the 80s, people made those jokes.
It goes back even farther than that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And one thing he's like, if they're Italians, it's a mob. If they're blacks, it's a gang. And if they're Jews, well, it's a coincidence and you shouldn't mention it. So what I really think Dave was trying to say is that it's bullshit that there's this idea that Jews run Hollywood or the entertainment business, and you shouldn't mention it. Because frankly, if I was Jewish, and Ari Shaffir kind of addressed this in his last special that came out recently. It's just called Jew. It's on YouTube. It's free to watch. He asked for donations if you like it. Mm-hmm. And is that a bad thing for a historically downtrodden people that have repeatedly been beaten, taken advantage of, and enslaved, for them to succeed and run things? That means they became managers and producers and entertainment lawyers and all these positions of power. So if they rose up from where they were just held back by the Egyptian pharaoh and treated as slaves, why is it a bad thing to say that?
It's in the context it's being used. You realize that, right? It's not bad to say that there's a lot of Jews in Hollywood. It's bad when you're saying it as there's a lot of Jews in Hollywood. You know what I mean? It's in how you're saying
the inflection of your voice.
Right. And you feel like there's this cabal or this group that's holding you back, or that's why you didn't get the role, or that's why you're not successful in Hollywood, right?
You're not Jewish enough?
Well, right. Yeah. I get it. It's one of these things, though, that there's nepotism in any business, right? And there just happens to be this sense of community when it comes to religious groups. That is why a lot of them would extend jobs and favors to they know in their church or in their temple or whatever have you.
Family
Synagogue.
members that immigrate here and they need work.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So it just makes sense that there are going to be groups of people that get into certain businesses. And this just happened to be Hollywood and show business and productions and a lot of your arts, your theater in New York and things like that. It's just the way it was. It transferred from one to another.
What about anything he said sounded like he was saying it like, oh, there's a lot of Jews. It didn't sound like he was coming off like that to me.
No, I didn't take that way at all. And I think too often when we want to get inflamed, we don't want to be thoughtful. We can still be thoughtful and have discussions about these things. And it's actually the best way to have discussions about race and some of the things going on, I believe.
Religion, politics.
You got it, right? We're too incensed otherwise. If you can detach yourself from some of the emotion, maybe we could get somewhere on some of these fucking topics, you know?
But that's not the state of America.
Well, we've got 2 news organizations really fanning the flames and a few other small bit players that want to fan it even more.
It's just this constant flow of ideological extremism and people that are butthurt and like, oh, you did this, and they scolded us for something before, so let's get them back. It's a lot of tit for tat shit, but I'm basically calling out the snowflake liberal crybabies on this one because nothing about the way that Dave approached that seemed to me like he was mocking anything about Hebrewism or Jews in general, or saying, oh, those goddamn Jews. He didn't say anything like that. He didn't come off like that. It's kind of like his trans jokes where people are like, he's transphobic. No, he's actually having an intelligent and witty conversation where he challenges the notion that we have to be all accepting. And the minority that sit there and go, I'm cool with it. I just don't get it, and don't force me to play along. That's where he is at, in that gray zone. And everyone's like, you're a piece of shit. Cancel Dave Chappelle. And it's unfair because much like any time you bring up any sort of race issue nowadays, and I'm going to fucking single out young millennials and Gen Z, they're so fucking maladapted to handle any sort of extensive conversation or ideas that deal with race or gender identity or sexual orientation without pointing a fucking finger and accusing you of an ism.
Yeah. It's interesting how a generation that's been coddled and raised as princes and princesses now think that they have the right to point the finger when they just don't quite understand certain things yet.
And they're all about acceptance and inclusion. But if you don't believe what they believe, then fuck you. We're going to cancel you. So, for instance, if I was to refer to somebody, let's say there's 3 guys standing on a corner. I'm like, oh, hey, there's my friend Tony. Which one? The black one. There's an entire segment of those generations and the American population that would say, that's racist. Why'd you have to point out his color? Because one's white, one's black, one's Latino. They're all wearing the same color because they just got done playing a soccer game at the college field about 3 blocks away. And I'm trying to point out which one I know without having to go, the guy in the middle. I shouldn't have to police my language out of fear that bringing up demographic information is going to incite some sort of hatred against me. And frankly, to say it's racist to call someone black is preposterous and borderline fucking retarded. Because if I said, that guy, the black one, I know him, and he's a piece of shit because he's black.
What?
Clear racism.
Right.
Or if I go, my friend's the black one, he's not as good as the white guy at soccer. That's a little bit like, what do you mean by that exactly? Right. Like he just doesn't have the skills, or you're insinuating that he should be on the basketball court instead?
Well, why do you got to refer to him as the white guy? What's his name, right? Why couldn't you have used, you know what I mean?
Well, I don't know his name. That's the thing.
The other guy.
So when they sit there and be like, the U of M years ago, like, we're no longer going to release race information about suspected perpetrators that commit crimes on campus because people feel it too reflects poorly on the black community, because so many of them are like, oh, it was a Somali guy. Oh, it was a man of color. They're just like, it was a male who was wearing a hooded sweatshirt. Holy shit, that's like 1/3 of all the guys on campus at any given moment.
And just flash forward that a few years now, how do you know it was a male?
Oh, yeah, see? He might have identified as a they, them.
It was an it.
Could have been a non-binary.
It that raped another it. Or them and them. You know what I mean? And I do not try to... I try to be respectful of whatever pronouns or whatever way you want to associate. And if you let me know ahead of time, that's how you want to identify as, then I can work with that. But when I have to guess and then get reprimanded because I guessed wrong, that's hard, I think, for a lot of Americans to take. A lot of people to take.
Oh, right? Yeah.
And I think you're going to get people that are a lot more accepting of change when you don't browbeat them with it, or, like you say, cancel people, or try to use your voice to berate somebody else instead of trying to explain it better, right? They get mad because it wasn't explained right.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the kids here has a friend at school that apparently has decided that they're trans.
Okay.
And changed their name. And she referred to her friend by their birth name. I'm like, you just dead named them. Your generation's all about pointing that shit out. And her friend's like, I don't care. It's technically my name still. I'm like, oh, What the fuck? A fucking 12-year-old can figure that out, but 20 and 30-year-olds are sitting here like, you just dead-named Ellen Page. It's Elliot, you piece of shit. And all the time, instead of conversations, it's accusations.
Right.
You're sexist, you're racist, you're transphobic, you're homophobic, you're ageist, you're ableist, you're this, that, the other, and shut the fuck up. I'm never going to be sensitive enough for you because you keep moving the goalposts. And frankly, back when I was in high school, we took great joy in referring to people and each other who were being chintzy as being a Jew. And that's not cool. But we understood why we did it. We also called things gay. And then our teacher flat out said, I'm going on sabbatical to finish a book I'm writing. When I come back, I want you to have broken yourselves of that habit. We did it then. We don't do it now. So if I'm telling you that I did it then, should I be canceled and lose my job and my family and everything I've ever worked for just because of shit I did when I was 14, 15, and 16? That's fucking preposterous.
You know, there has to be certain room for growth. And I understand that there's certain infractions. There's no room for growth, right? You assault somebody sexually or you do something like that. Years later, it should come out and you should be thrown in jail. You're a piece of shit, right? But there's other things that are just, you can kind of chalk up to the idiocy of youth, the society at the time, the norms that were expected, right? Of you. You're right. When I used the term gay back then, it was because that was what we were taught to use as a term at the schoolyard for something that was just sucked. It was bad. It was not cool, right? It wasn't until years later. I didn't even know what smear the queer initially meant, right? When we were playing it, I just knew that it was the name of the game where the kid would get the ball and everybody would bum rush him and tackle him and rip the ball away. And then they're the queer and they would get smeared, right? I mean, so all these things you don't know until you have hindsight, right? Well, allow us to have room for growth, especially those of us who are older, right? That space for growth. I don't try to say those things now, but every once in a while, I could let 1990s Neil out and say gay to something that sucks.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's just so ingrained to me from back then.
Well, the kids heard me say it once recently, like I was speaking referentially. And then one of the kids did. I'm like, no, you don't get to do that. You weren't alive back then. You didn't grow up then. Yeah. You don't have access to the usage of that. You can't even tell stories about that. I mean, fuck, I got in trouble working at the jail because I explained a story of my mom using the N-word, and I also explained that whole using the word Jew in fucking high school, and somebody tattled on me, and I was accused of racism and anti-Semitism. And I had to go to my boss and go, I wasn't speaking ill of blacks or Jews. We were having a conversation about our different upbringings, me being a white male, the other person being a female Asian, so a minority, and she's adopted, and the difference in what we experienced in our different families and cultures growing up. So we're having a conversation where I talk about racism and anti-Semitism that I have experienced or seen firsthand, and I'm speaking referentially, and you are saying it's comparable to me being anti-Semitic or racist. How badly do you not want to get sued right now?
Right.
Because holy fucking shit, that's enough to ruin a career. And this was, Jesus Christ, 2015. That was 7 fucking years ago. It seems like a lifetime ago.
There has to be an understanding of context, right? If you wouldn't have been able to explain that, right, and somebody just took that at word value based on what dudes said or the accusation was, all of a sudden that's getting around and that's the story, right? You're an anti-Semite. You're a racist. No. They don't have the background that you were speaking contextually in this conversation about historical events.
Well, it's funny because it was my boss's boss who wanted me nailed to a cross for it. And then my union rep's like, why are you guys having conversations like this? I'm like, why are we sitting at 3 a.m. and relating to each other about our human experiences to kill time when we try to fight the urge to want to go to fucking sleep? Are you serious? And my boss is like, well, you just come in and you do your job and keep your head down. You won't have these problems. Like, everybody fucking talks about all kinds of shit. I could sit there and find offense if I wanted to hard enough in anything that goes on in any conversation between the other guards, but you're not going to hold them to as hard of a standard because I'm a very vocal pro-union guy who points out things that management does that I don't like. And because I turned in a female supervisor for sexual harassment about 6 months prior, it's like they were looking to get me back.
Oh, right, because you're not a team player. If you don't follow that code, of keeping shit quiet for some reason.
But that's the point, is you can't even reference certain words. I'm just going to say it. You can't say the word nigger. You're supposed to say N-word. I'm not endorsing that word, glorifying its usage. I listen to rap music. They use it all the fucking time. And just because I listen to it doesn't mean that I'm glorifying racism and using that word to say nigger's the worst word you can say. I had to use that phrase to my kids to illustrate a point of why you never say that fucking word. And there's people that are like, you should have said the N-word. No, they need to know the fucking word. Just like faggot. I have to say faggot is a word that if you call somebody, you're going to get in trouble because it's a slander for gays. Fairy, fruity pants, all this shit. I've told them a ton. I'm like, you can't say chink. You can't say spick. If you hear these words, somebody is being really inappropriate.
And you probably shouldn't hang out with
fucking
them.
Stay away from them.
Nope.
Now, I have to give my children the knowledge of those words' existence so they have a base of reference to decide for themselves whether they're going to act and put somebody in their place for using it or keep their head down. It's up to them to do either, but how can we inspire change in the youngest of generations that are starting to formulate complicated thoughts if they don't have the contextual information to utilize? It's like saying, go in there and win that sword fight, but you don't give them the sword.
Aren't you, in a way, though, maybe giving them the sword? I mean, one could make that argument the other way around.
I am, but that's what I'm saying. I have to tell them the word so they know the word so they don't use the word.
But I grew up, we didn't have a lot of Asian families in our immediate area. I know there were some areas where there was like more maybe Southeast Asian communities and whatnot. There wasn't a whole lot of them around. So I was not real familiar with a lot of the slang for people of Asian descent, right?
All the slur words.
I didn't learn some of them until it was later on, and I heard somebody else say one, and to me it was just weird. I'm like, I'd never heard that before, and it wasn't even part of my repertoire, and it never has become because I never grew up hearing it, right? Now, there could be a thing where if you grow up hearing it, you're going to be more apt to say it. Like you referencing, and I'm going to say the N-word because I don't like even saying the word. I grew up listening to NWA, believe it or not. You know what I mean? Ninth grade, I had a tape. All sorts of like pretty hardcore rap. And to sing those songs and to not say those words was impossible, right? It just went.
Yeah, you would sing it proudly and not give a shit. But if you sing it now, you get to that word, you're like, you pause and you have to edit yourself like you're on the fucking terrestrial radio. It's goddamn ridiculous.
Right, exactly. But, you know, if for me to use it, I also have to see how it's inappropriate for me to use it because they're using it in a way to reclaim it. And I was just using it because I thought they were cool lyrics because of what they were talking about. That was basically my early adulthood enlightenment into, you know, basically black culture and black society that you didn't see on the Cosby Show. You didn't see in It's a Different World. You know what I mean? All the shows that were popular back then.
God, imagine
Family
if
Matters. You know what I mean?
Dwayne Wayne just flips his glasses up and he's like, "What up, N-words?"
Right? Whitley and all the other girls.
Excuse me. Yeah, Urkel would have shit his pants. I mean, even when he became Stefan Urkel and he was cool.
Oh, yeah, for an episode.
He was never a gangster.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I mean. So that to me was like, oh, okay. So everything isn't rosy. There is a lot of suppression, repression. You know what I mean? And so I just thought it was really cool to hear some of this stuff. And it was catchy beats, catchy lyrics. And
it comes with the territory of immersing yourself in 80s and 90s hip-hop culture. It's just a part of it. For instance, you look back at things that were done or said, and I've introduced my kids to this thing. I said bok mao choy. Now, bok choy is food.
Yep.
I don't actually know what it is.
It's like a celery.
Okay. Well, I worked with a guy at Menards, and this is back in like the 02, 03 range.
I remember.
And he'd walk around going, bok mao choy. Around these parts, there were hardly any Asians then. Now there's fucking tons of Asians. To the point where I jokingly said at Target one day, God damn, it's like the Asian invasion. Oh, really? And then my 9-year-old's like laughing her ass off at it, and she's like, there's an Asian, Dad. I'm like, shut the fuck up!
That wasn't
shut the fuck up! The point of me saying that is it's a joke, and we're pointing out that suddenly there's a lot more cultural diversity in the area. What we're not doing is saying it like you're saying it, like, oh my God, get them. Or, oh, there's one of them.
Or pointing and looking at that.
Oh, God, that's fucking more terrible. Yeah. Because the whole bok mao choy thing, she's like, what is bok mao choy? I'm like, okay, so you hear Asian people speak in foreign dialects, and you don't know what they're saying. They're, she fucking dies laughing anytime I speak, Asian gibberish,
Oh, no.
and then I fucking punctuate it with bok bao choy at the end. And I'm like, that's what we used to do with that like 20 years ago.
Sure.
So it's kind of an inside joke. I'm like, I want you to know, I'm not saying that to make fun of Asian people, but we are saying it to make fun of the way they talk because we don't know what they're saying. What they're probably saying is, hey, I bet those white pieces of shit are making fun of us for being Asian right now. But I wouldn't know because I don't fucking speak Mandarin. But you're going to need to learn a lot of these phrases because in like 15 years, when there's a Chinese flag hanging over the White House because they've taken us over, because there's like 1.5 billion of those motherfuckers, bok bao choy could get you killed then. So just, know it, learn it, live it, tuck it away. It's still fun to say. You can still fucking talk in other accents. Dr. Murr, my beatboxer friend, right? He does all kinds of shit. Beatboxing and drumming and Twitch videos and snack sampling videos and shit. He was on Blumpkin and Friends, my other show that's on hiatus. And he started talking in like a Jamaican accent. He's like, oh, I shouldn't do patois. And I'm like, God damn it, you can't even do an impression of what somebody from that region would sound like. Do you know how fucking hard it is to be a voice actor now if you're not the color of the character you're voicing?
Oh, yeah. And just think about it. What if you're a straight guy doing a gay man's voice? Or, there's rules against that, too.
I had to fucking tell my daughters what flamboyant gay means. And they're like, well, I don't get it. Like, if you hear a guy who's really gay and he sounds like this, odds are he is super gay. There's a guy that works at Target nearby. And one day I was just in line. I'm like, okay, I just want to say this to you, dude, and I'm not trying to offend you, but your voice reminds me of Squidward from SpongeBob. And he's like, really? Because I think I sound more like the nanny lady from the show, The Nanny. And I'm like, God damn, this dude is queer as a $3 bill.
Fran Drescher from The Nanny?
I guess. I don't know. He works at Target. Every time I see him, though, I go, damn, Daniel, to myself. Remember that video, Damn, Daniel? Back in the day, the kid saying it repeatedly in like middle school or some shit, looking at his friend's shoes or I don't know, something fucking stupid.
Yep.
So I'm like, that guy is what I imagine a gay guy sounds like who's super duper gay. Now, there's other gay guys like Matt Bomber who doesn't fucking sound gay. There's men that you would never think love dicks in their butts that talk less like a woman but are super gay. You never know.
Well, there's a spectrum. I mean...
Yeah, there is.
Well, I say that positively, and you go, ugh.
Oh, see what I did there? I'm being ableist.
Yeah. See, now you're falling into that box they want to put you in.
This is the point of this episode, is you can point out physical characteristics or their race or their gender identity or their orientation. You can point it out and kind of like poke a little fun at it. And I'm fine with that because I understand the nuance of doing so does not mean that I dislike them or I think they're bad people because they are who they are. And that's what an entire generation needs to fucking wrap their minds around, is that sometimes the funniest thing you can say is mean. That's a Dave Chappelle quote.
Gotcha, bitch!
And you say the mean shit, you get the poison out, you go back to being yourself, but when you're around those people, you treat them with dignity and respect and reverence. I have been in a mosque. I had no idea when to bow. Guess what? I just bowed when everybody else bowed. It was at the Beast's dad's funeral mass. And her brother's like, how does he know when to do the stuff they were doing? I'm like, motherfucker, I am in, air quotes here, foreign territory as a white Catholic raised man in the burbs in a suburban mosque. These dudes are all super Muslim. They walk up to me and they're like, Assalamu alaikum. And I'm like, Malaikum salam. I'm pretty sure I nailed it. I don't know, but I'm trying to fucking fit in, so I'm going to do what they do because I'm trying to be a chameleon, motherfucker, because that's how you show respect, and also don't get pointed out.
Yeah, keep your head down.
People got to fucking understand. There's nuance, and you can poke fun at shit, and it doesn't mean that you hate them or think less of them. Racism is if I'm like talking some Nazi-esque master race bullshit like a fascist from the 1930s, and I don't. If you say, man, black dudes commit a lot of crimes. Man, black dudes make a lot of babies they don't fucking raise. Okay, it's a shitty thing to say. Unfortunately, it's an inconvenient truth. But what I'm not saying is, man, black people commit a lot of crimes. I fucking hate them. So when people are like, statistics can be racist. No, they fucking can't. Because a lot of white dudes beat their wives. White people are shitty too.
I was going to say, a lot of white dudes commit crime.
Yeah, it's just... You're talking statistics. So all these things can't be racist or nothing is racist because you've devalued the term and the concept to the point where it holds no fucking water for you to point a finger because I'm going to go, You're fucking stupid and you're emotionally a child. I'm not going to listen to you. Shut up! That's just, I'm so sick of every time somebody like Dave Chappelle, who's a comedian, whose job it is to be observant and poke fun at things for the sake of provoking thought, gets fucking lambasted for doing so because intellectual weaklings can't fucking handle it.
I saw this small little YouTube clip, I think, about Chappelle, and it was interesting to go back to the whole trans topic. It was a joke he was doing basically about how, he was at a club and, he was hanging out with this gal, turns out was a trans person. He basically, danced with her all night, and had a great time. He's like, why didn't you say anything once he found out? Why didn't you say anything at first? And he does this impression of her saying, well, I didn't think you'd, I didn't want you to be upset, and all this other stuff. And I was upset, this and that. I just wish I would have known. And, well, I guess if you don't want to speak to me, that's fine. And he goes, no, well, the song's not over yet. So end up having dance and spent hung out with her all night, ate breakfast, together. And, I just thought it was kind of endearing because you get labeled something and everybody repeats these things too nowadays. Like everybody knows something. Everybody wants to be in the know. They talk like they're knowledgeable and they don't know, right? They don't know the full story. They don't know everything that goes on and they don't give you the benefit of the doubt anymore.
No, not at all. It's fucking ridiculous and I hate it. It's a disgusting world we live in today where it just, any idea you have is problematic to somebody. And then they're like, hey, other people that also feel this way, since the internet's connected all the dum-dums, they're like, hey, let's pile on. Let's shit on them. Right. Let's ruin their life.
Yeah, there seems to be infamy and notoriety, and either one of them can destroy you.
It's any wonder that everybody is constantly about to have a Michael Douglas and falling down moment. Weird with all the pressure to be fucking perfect that it's driving people to violence. Go fucking figure. Interact with the show on Twitter at What Do We Call It. That is at What Do We Call It. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/group/What Do We Call It podcast show. For the What Do We Call It podcast, I'm J-Man.
This is Steiny.
And that's the end.